chronological overview of Alexander's wars with the Achaemenid Empire Battle of the Granicus, 334 BC. In 334 BC, Alexander of Macedon launched his campaign into Asia. The Achaemenid forces were defeated near the Dardanelles, marking Alexander's first major victory over the Persian Empire. Battle of Issus, 333 BC. In 333 BC, at the Battle of Issus, Alexander's army defeated the Achaemenid forces commanded by Darius III, dealing a significant blow to Persian power. Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BC. In 331 BC, the Achaemenid army suffered a decisive and devastating defeat at the Battle of Gaugamela, fought east of modern-day Mosul. This battle effectively ended Persian resistance on a large scale. Battle of the Persian Gate, 330 BC. In 330 BC, Ariobarzanes and his companions attempted to block Alexander's advance toward Persepolis at the Persian Gate. Eventually, a local shepherd or farmer revealed a route that allowed Alexander to outflank the defenders. As a result of this surprise attack, the Achaemenid forces were destroyed. Death of Darius III, 330 BC. In 330 BC, Darius III was killed, and Ecbatana was captured. Persepolis was destroyed by Alexander, bringing the rule of the Achaemenid Empire to an end. Eastern campaigns, 333–28 BC. From 330 to 328 BC, Alexander campaigned in northeastern and eastern Iran. During this period, he founded several cities named Alexandria. He also appointed a number of Iranians as satraps, and some Iranian commanders were incorporated into Alexander's army. In 334 BCE, Alexander the Great crossed the Dardanelles with an army consisting of approximately 48,000 infantry, 6,100 cavalry, and 120 warships carrying around 38,000 crew members. His forces were drawn from ancient Macedonia and the Greek city-states. Others were hired mercenaries, while some were levied peasants taken from the estates of nobles in Thrace, Paeonia, and Illyria. Upon landing in Asia, Alexander symbolically cast a spear into the ground and proclaimed that he accepted Asia as a gift from the gods, thereby openly declaring his intention to conquer the entire Achaemenid Empire. This act also highlighted Alexander's strong inclination toward warfare, in contrast to his father's preference for diplomacy. After securing his first victory against the Persians at the Battle of the Granicus, Alexander accepted the surrender of the city of Sardis along with its treasury and continued his advance along the coast of Ionia. He successfully besieged Halicarnassus in Caria, ultimately forcing his enemies, the Greek commander Memnon of Rhodes and the Persian satrap of Caria, Orontobates, to retreat by sea. Alexander then entrusted the governance of Caria to Ada of Caria, who had formally adopted him as her son. From Halicarnassus, Alexander marched toward the mountainous region of Lycia and the plain of Pamphylia. He was determined to control all coastal cities in order to deny the Persian navy any suitable harbors. Beyond Pamphylia, however, there were no major ports along the coast, prompting Alexander to turn inland. Although he refrained from launching a full-scale surprise assault on Termessos, he was nevertheless able to neutralize opposition there with relative ease. Later, at Gordium, the capital of ancient Phrygia, Alexander famously solved the legendary Gordian knot, which had long been considered impossible to untie. According to prophecy, only the future king of Asia could accomplish this feat. As the legend recounts, Alexander declared that the method of untying the knot was irrelevant and cut it apart with a single blow of his sword. After spending the winter, Alexander the Great's army crossed the Cilician Gates in 333 BCE, and, in November, confronted the main Persian forces under the command of Darius III, the Emperor of Iran. In the Battle of Issus, Alexander dealt a severe defeat to Darius, who was forced to flee the battlefield, leaving behind his wife, daughters, mother Gambis, and a legendary treasury. The Persian army collapsed following Darius's retreat. Darius sent a proposal offering 10,000 talents in ransom for his family and the return of all territories Alexander had conquered up to that point, seeking a peace agreement. Alexander replied that, as the king of Asia, decisions regarding territorial divisions were his alone. Alexander continued his campaigns to secure control over Syria and most of the coastal regions of Phoenicia. The following year, he was forced to lay siege to Tyre. After a long and grueling siege, he finally captured the city. Men of fighting age were executed, while women and children were sold into slavery. After the destruction of Tyre, most of the cities along the route to Egypt surrendered immediately, with the exception of Gaza. The fortress of Gaza was built on a hill and was well fortified and heavily armed, necessitating a siege. After repelling attacks 3 times, the citadel eventually fell, although Alexander himself suffered a severe wound to his shoulder. As in Tyre, the men of fighting age were executed, while women and children were sold into slavery. In contrast, Jerusalem opened its gates in surrender. According to Josephus, the inhabitants showed Alexander a prophecy from the book of Daniel, likely chapter 8, that described the conquest of the Persian Empire by a powerful Greek king. Alexander spared the lives of Jerusalem's inhabitants and continued southward toward Egypt. In 332 BCE, Alexander advanced into Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator. At the Siwa oasis in the Libyan desert, he was hailed as the new lord of the world, and the son of Ammon. From this point on, Alexander frequently referred to Zeus Ammon as his true father. And coins struck during this period depicted him with ram's horns, a symbol of divinity. During his stay in Egypt, he founded the city of Alexandria, which would later become the magnificent capital of the Ptolemaic dynasty. In 331 BCE, Alexander the Great left Egypt and marched toward Mesopotamia. At the Battle of Gaugamela, he once again defeated Darius III, who fled the battlefield. Alexander pursued him all the way to Arbel. The Battle of Gaugamela was the final and decisive encounter between Alexander and Darius. Darius escaped through the mountains to Ecbatana, while Alexander captured Babylon. According to the Babylonian astronomical diary, Alexander, referred to as King of the World, sent messengers ahead to the people of Babylon before entering the city, declaring, "I will not enter your homes." After leaving Babylon, Alexander the Great proceeded to Susa, one of the Achaemenid Empire's capitals, where he seized its legendary wealth. He sent the majority of his army along the royal road to the ceremonial capital, Persepolis, while he led an elite force along a more direct route. The Persian gates had been blocked by Ariobarzanes and his troops, forcing Alexander to assault the pass. After breaking Ariobarzanes' resistance, he hurried to Persepolis to prevent the Persian garrison from looting the treasury. Upon entering the city, Alexander allowed his soldiers to plunder for several days. He remained in Persepolis for 5 months. During this period, the eastern part of Xerxes's palace caught fire, which eventually spread to the rest of the city. Historians have proposed various causes for the fire, including drunkenness or deliberate revenge, possibly echoing the burning of the Acropolis during the Second Greco-Persian War. In pursuit of Darius III, Alexander the Great first advanced into Media and then into Parthia. The fate of the Persian king was no longer in his own hands. He was captured by Bessus. The satrap of Bactria. As Alexander approached, Bessus ordered Darius to be fatally stabbed, and then declared himself Artaxerxes V. Retreating to Central Asia to wage guerrilla warfare against Alexander. Alexander honored Darius with a grand royal funeral near the tombs of his ancestors, and claimed that Darius had named him as his successor at the moment of death. Nevertheless, historians generally regard Darius's death as marking the end of the Achaemenid Empire. Alexander considered Bessus a usurper and resolved to defeat him. What began as a campaign against Bessus evolved into a vast expedition across Central Asia. During this campaign, Alexander founded a series of new cities, all named Alexandria, including present-day Kandahar and Alexandria Eshate. His march took him through Media, Parthia, Hyrcania, western Afghanistan, Zranka, Regay, southern and central Afghanistan, Bactria, northern and central Afghanistan, and Sakhistan. In 329 BCE, Spitamenes, holding an uncertain post in the satrapy of Sogdiana, betrayed Bessus and handed him over to Ptolemy, who executed him. Later, while Alexander was dealing with a mounted Illyrian raiding force along the Sur Daria, Spitamenes incited the Sogdians to revolt. Alexander personally defeated the Sogdians at the Sur Daria, then moved against Spitamenes, defeating him in the Battle of Gabai. Following this defeat, Spitamenes was killed by his own men, who then requested peace. By this time, Alexander the Great had proudly assumed the title of King of Kings, and had begun adopting certain Iranian dress codes and court rituals. Notably, he introduced proskynesis, the symbolic act of kissing the hand or falling prostrate, which Persians performed before superiors. The Greeks considered such gestures appropriate only for the gods, and many believed that by enforcing these acts toward himself, Alexander was claiming divinity. This alienated many Macedonians, though Alexander eventually abandoned these practices. A conspiracy against Alexander's life was uncovered, leading to the execution of one of his officers, Philotas, for failing to warn him of the danger. In accordance with the principle that the death of the son required the death of the father, Parmenion, who was responsible for guarding the treasury at Ecbatana, was executed to prevent any attempt at revenge. Perhaps most shameful, Alexander personally killed a man who had saved his life at the Battle of the Granicus. This occurred during a heated argument while Alexander was intoxicated at Maracanda, when Cletus the Black accused him of committing serious errors, chiefly abandoning Macedonian customs and adopting the corrupt ways of Eastern life. Later, during the campaign in Central Asia, another conspiracy against Alexander's life was revealed, allegedly instigated by his personal attendants. The historian Callisthenes of Olynthus became implicated, although historians still debate the extent of his involvement. Callisthenes had fallen out of favor with Alexander for leading opposition to the practice of proskynesis. When Alexander the Great set out for Asia, he appointed Antipater, an experienced commander, political leader, and member of Philip's royal guard, to oversee the defense of Macedonia. Alexander's confidence in Antipater's leadership assured him that Greece would remain peaceful in his absence. The only notable exception occurred when King Agis III called for war in 331 BCE. But Antipater defeated and killed him at the Battle of Megalopolis. Antipater delegated the punishment of the Spartans to the Corinthian League, which, in turn, left the decision to Alexander, who pardoned them. There was also significant tension between Antipater and Olympias, with each lodging complaints about the other to Alexander. Overall, Greece enjoyed peace, prosperity, and economic growth during Alexander's campaign in Asia. Alexander sent considerable spoils from the conquered territories to Greece, stimulating trade and circulating wealth throughout his empire. However, his constant need for fresh troops and the migration of Macedonians across his empire depleted the population at home. This demographic strain contributed to Macedonia's gradual decline after Alexander's era and its eventual subjugation by Rome.